conversation with Dhor K about the pilot mission over Scandinavia executed by Raguel, Salaphaiel and Gabriel in 2021. Following and monitoring the subject's road trajectory from the sky. During this operation, they encountered severe winter weather conditions. They were hit by the lightning and lost Muon communication with the team in Dhor K. How did it all happen, and how was it possible? Weren't the shields on? Dhor K explains. The name of the ship was Super Ghost, obviously a humanized name. Original name in Taygetan, Taygetan. Ship's class, Scimitar. Length 63 meters. The color of the hull, light gray, almost white, with a capacity in the cabin for 4 people. Originally in Spanish, 2021. Information given to ex-contactees. Could you explain what the process is from the time the order is given until they leave with the ship?
Alec sent the data from Esther's last message to command and control of this ship where we are, Alanim, Kila, Nashara, and where the situation was analyzed with a hologram in front of everyone here, simulating the terrain, the road with the car, and the huge polar air mass with high altitude thunderstorm on approach. Because as the ship passed overhead from the windows over Norway, you could see the huge white mass coming down towards Finland. It was over 1,000 kilometers long, about 650 kilometers wide, and at a ceiling or height of 20,000 feet with a thunderstorm above. I know that from the ground things look different, but from here the situation was perceived as delicate, with the potential for the storm to trap the car and even bury it in snow. The order was issued directly by Alanim, and Kila transmitted it to the hangar where the Super Ghost was already prepared. 63 meters long, double turbine, double 0-point reactor, fighter type. Rag put on his black and blue protective flight uniform, and Salaphaiel, who volunteered to accompany him, did the same. As they went up the ramp, Gabriel, already dressed and ready, came up with them at the last minute. He was also present at the incident. The cabin has 4 seats.
How do you prepare for such a mission?
The equipment on the ship depends on the nature of the mission. In this case, a special crane was installed inside, like a mobile sled, to pull a car and snow equipment inside. That is, snowshoes, thermal equipment, shovels and axes. You can just use a tractor beam, but it's more invasive. Kinder means are preferred. The mission is prepared with a flight plan, trajectory, mission conditions and objectives. The positions of human military radar sites and their blind or weak points are anticipated. This is done with a detailed hologram of the region projected in front of the pilots with all pertinent details, such as visual simulation of the range of military radars, weather situation, wind direction and strength. The entry trajectory from the north and the exit trajectory to the west, course to pass and the correct altitude for each point of the trajectory to minimize the possibility of detection. Once this data is collected, it is passed to the Super Ghost ship's computer so that the AI itself can guide the pilots. The pilot and his companion put on a special suit of intelligent material that absorbs impacts and protects like an exoskeleton. Upon impact, it becomes very hard in a fraction of a second, impenetrable. And it also regulates body temperature. It is fireproof, bulletproof, energy weapon proof, as well as accident proof. Over that suit, they put on a special suit similar to what human anti-gravity pilots wear, but much more advanced, in the form of a vest and a cover-like pant over the legs and strong boots. Over that suit, they put on an inflatable life jacket in case they end up in the water. You never know. Even the best ships have crashed. This is landing or falling with wet feet on water or dry feet on land in pilot talk. We also say wet feet when an aircraft flies over water and dry feet when it flies over dry land. In addition to the equipment described above itself, it is simple with the exception of the crane. The ship is prepared in the sense of making sure that all its systems are in good working order and no repairs are needed. The reactors are checked for conditions such as the temperature and power output in watts. The engines are checked for obstructions and that the turbines rotate freely without vibrations. The electrical system is checked with a self-diagnostic system and by walking around the ship manually with the pilot's own eyes without instruments. You inspect for external power cables still connected to the ship, such as system support hoses or anything that is obstructing it from moving. It is checked that there are no open external panels, which are the little doors that open in the hull to give access to interior systems. Make sure all external panel doors are closed and fasteners are securely fastened. Once in flight, the polymorphous metal melts the entire hull into one piece. Even so, if a door is not properly closed, it can cause damage to internal systems. Once everything is in order, the ship is given the green light to depart. The pilot and crew board put on the 5-point seat belts in the cockpit and start the engine ignition sequence. Electrical system activated, cancellers online, computers online, sensors online. The APUs are turned on, which are small electric turbines on the sides of the ship inside, but with exhausts to the outside, which are the ones that give the power or the first energy needed to start spinning the huge counter-rotating turbines of the ship. Once the two APUs are turned on, the computer is instructed to start the main engines, or you press the famous red button marked Engine Start. And within seconds you hear the turbines picking up speed and then two explosions, one after the other, coming from the plasma coming to life. The ignition explosions are followed by a rocket-accented turbine roar. The gravity cancellers ignite and the outer doors of the Tolika's main hangar open for departure. The ship is ready to depart. It slides out of the Tolika and the pilot, either mentally, by command, computer or joystick, sets the course down towards the Earth.
When you have two pilots on the same ship, do you both pilot? Or what function does each one have?
They sit side by side with two other seats as well. Side by side, directly behind them. The ship pilots itself or is piloted by only one person, its owner or pilot. But your companion can in any case take control. The function of the passenger can be to go just for the ride or to operate sensors or electronics. But the pilot himself, with the help of AI, can do it on his own. The pilot can really do it all, and the ship itself can also do it all.
Did the ship have gravity cancellers activated inside? What caused Salaphaiel to be unwell?
They rarely use the cancellers at 100% because it doesn't feel like anything, and it's harder to fly a ship in manual mode like Rag was doing. But yes, they were on. The thing is that the ship was moving abruptly at low altitude and the movement that Salaphaiel perceived did not correspond with what his eyes were seeing outside the ground and its details, causing him to feel dizzy.
Could you explain in more detail how the ship searches for the car's position once it's located? What's the process like?
Esther gave her position to Anika, who then gave it to Raguel. The command then used magnetic sensors, since the optical ones weren't working due to weather conditions, to find her car model on the corresponding road. There aren't many like that in Norway anyway, as far as I understand. So it was easy to identify her car. Once identified, the vehicle's specific and unique mass and gravity are captured. With interferometer type sensors, they were able to track her even when she was out of direct line of sight.
Was the ship carrying shields? If so, how could it have been struck by lightning?
Rag turned off the shields because flying into a dense snowstorm with electricity would cause the shield toroid to glow like an incandescent ball, giving away its position. Norway is NATO. It has bases with advanced detectors not far from the area, and to the east is Murmansk, a Russian base. Also very complete, full of sensors.
How did the lightning affect the ship? How did it affect it being built with intelligent polymorphic material with the ability to repair itself?
Scimitar-class fighter craft, although top of the line, are old. Yes, it has polymorphic material that self-repaired. It's still left black at the impact site, and an external antenna was charred. The antenna was not polymorphic material. Inside, the damaged circuits are quite normal. Cables, developers and printed circuit boards that do not self-repair suffered overload. They had to be replaced. The difference with an airplane is that a spaceship operates with a system of superconducting cables that closes a circuit between the nose part of the ship and the electromagnetic plasma emitted by the engines in the back. We can see that the lightning path entered through the outer UHF-VHF antenna, passing through the communication circuits. Then, the frame that holds them to the ground and down to the superconducting cable. It is this that drew the lightning into the ship, the electrically interesting part for the lightning. It then traveled down those cables without damaging them to the engines in the back, where the extra electricity just fed the plasma from the engines, scattering it back to the jet plasma itself.
What flight mode was the ship in at the moment?
It was in manual flight mode, without external shields, with transponder indicating a Russian Mi-17 rescue helicopter out of Murmansk, like the ones that fly in those storms in response to distress signals.
If the communication was through Muon neutrino, how could it have been interrupted? I mean, how could Raguel lose communication with you?
Aircraft fly into thunderstorms and get struck by lightning all the time. We assumed it would not be a problem, but the lightning struck the hull of the ship at the height just behind the bridge where the Muon equipment is located, damaging electrical circuits in the ship that power those systems. It seems that since a ship is electrical in its operation, it does not have the same response to lightning as an airplane. Rag already knew this. It was just bad luck as to where the lightning hit them. Already during the flight and just before they were struck by lightning, it was when communication with the ship was cut off. And while Rag and Salaphaiel were struggling with their own problem inside, the subject arrived at the intended destination. An RTB, return to base, signal was broadcast to Rag's ship with no response. With nothing to do and in poor condition, they returned to the Taygetan's base shortly thereafter.
Short complimentary chat with Yazhi, 2021. Originally in English. Something people asked when listening to this story. I just made a video about impenetrable shields. How come Raguel's ship suffered damage then? You mentioned something about posing as a plane, but that's just posing. It still is a spaceship. Were they off?
Had they been on, the ship would have glowed like a giant ball ionizing the atmosphere that was at super low temperature and full of snow. Would have made a nice blue plasma ball and would have blown the ship's cover. And they were very close to NATO bases in Norway. That's why.
It was giving off glowing light anyway, as reported by the subject.
Yes, but those were the ship's headlamps. And the engines do ionize anyway, but not as much. Full invisibility is not possible unless you have higher technology like a Suzy class.
Okay, and another question from the same person. How come communication was lost if you communicate through muons?
The lightning burned the electrical feed to the muon system. All they had was VHF and UHF. Bad luck. But the strike did damage several minor systems in the ship. They are not designed to fly without the main shields. The lightning strike damaged bridge components. I know lightning strikes aircraft with no consequence all the time, but this was an added problem to a starship because it's working with high energy magnets to cancel gravity, and it causes another energy flux, direction of electrical flow dynamic, that did cause an overload to some systems. This is also how many UFOs were downed by humans, by the way.
All our appreciation to Raguel, who lost his life in terrestrial year 2025.